This message is for you, chosen ones. Are you genuinely aware of how powerful God's protection is over your life? God's justice will not spare anyone who schemes against you. They might have plotted. They could even have had a chance at success. Here's the reality, though. It was no accident that they failed. God's hand was at work. Those who ventured to cross the boundary are now dealing with unanticipated consequences. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to express my gratitude to everyone who has helped our channel, especially through amazing thanks. Sharing these truths with the world is made possible by your generosity and trust. If this speaks to your soul, leave 9999 in the comments to show that you believe in God's perfect justice and timing. Imagine this now. Your adversaries were unaware that they were laying the groundwork for their own destruction while they were occupied with rolling stones and creating pits in your way. The reckoning is here. Proverbs 26:27 reminds us that whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. But what happens when their own traps reappear with a force from which they cannot escape? What happens when God not only stops their attacks, but also exposes them through their schemes? God is writing the script for their destruction. And the best part is that you didn't have to do a thing. Are you prepared to learn how heaven crafts a justice so swift, so profound, that it makes your enemies shudder? Let's take a closer look at this indisputable reality. For some, it's spiritual, while for others, it's literal. 1. The miscalculation of power. Have you ever felt that the odds were stacked against you? That those in positions of influence, wealth, or power were working extra hard to see you fail? And yet here you are, standing strong, even when it seemed like everything was set up to bring you down. God's chosen ones are going to jail. They didn't take your life, but God can take theirs. It's not luck. It's not coincidence. It's because you've been chosen. Being chosen is more than just a title. It's a divine calling that comes with an invisible shield, a protection so strong that even the forces of evil shudder before it. The catch is that your enemies are blind to it. Have you ever wondered why? Because they judge you by the standards of the world, money, connections, and physical strength. They believe you are weak and easily destroyed. They fail to remember that no amount of human effort can override what God has ordained. Remember Pharaoh in Exodus? He believed that his kingdom, wealth, and army were sufficient to disobey God's command to free the Israelites. I have raised you up to show you my power, so that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. But what really happened? Each plague that fell on Egypt was not merely a punishment. Rather, it was a declaration that God's power is supreme. Pharaoh thought he was fighting Moses, but in fact, he was fighting the God of all creation. Now consider your own life. Exodus 9:16. How many times have you encountered people who undervalued you? How many times have they attempted to use their power or influence to stop you? Their plans failed. But why? Because your battles are not fought with worldly weapons, and the weapons we use are not the weapons of the world. Instead, they possess divine ability to destroy strongholds. 2 Corinthians chapter 10:4. Therefore, when you decide not to strike back, when you maintain your composure when attacked, how do you think your adversaries view you? They take your silence as a sign of weakness, and your stillness as a sign of surrender. But the truth is that they are stepping into a divine trap. The people who plot against you always seem to face consequences far greater than anything you could have planned yourself, because God fights for you. The Lord will fight for you. They are unwittingly building the tools of their own downfall, just like Haman did in the book of Esther, when he built gallows to destroy Morai. Have you not seen this before? You just have to remain motionless. Exodus 14:14. Contemplate David and Goliath. Do you believe that David's adversaries believed him? A young boy with only a sling, a sword, and a few stones, he was ridiculed by Goliath. But what did David say? You come to me with a sword, a spear, and a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts. The battle was never about strength or weapons, but rather about who was fighting for him, as stated in 1 Samuel 17:45. Do you see the same pattern in your life? Have you noticed how frequently your enemies' plans fall apart? How their power seems to vanish just when they believe they have won? This isn't random. It's divine justice. God isn't just keeping an eye on you. He's actively working for you. As your enemies plan, strategize, and amass their resources, heaven is keeping track of everything they do. Do you think God doesn't know what they're doing? No, He's allowing them to face the consequences of their own actions. When the attacks come, what should you do? Should you defend yourself or retaliate? No, stand still and trust in the God who has already won the battle. Let me ask you one last question. Do you really believe that the person who called you is strong enough to protect you? Because if you do, you know that no enemy, no plan, no force, and no miscalculation of power can ever succeed against you, because you are someone who has been chosen, are safeguarded, and no weapon created against you will ever succeed. Secondly, there is the divine boomerang effect. The universe operates according to a spiritual law that is both exact and unavoidable. What is sent out gets amplified. When harm is planned against the chosen ones, it is like recklessly throwing a boomerang against you. This isn't karma. It's divine justice, tailored and deliberate. The thrower may feel strong in the moment, certain that they have the upper hand, but they are unaware that every action they take is already laying the groundwork for their own demise. Have you ever wondered why some schemes against you seem to fall apart without you doing anything? Joseph's story in Genesis is a great example of this. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Joseph's suffering led to his rise, and ultimately, it was his brothers who had to bow before him. Envious, his brothers sold him into slavery, believing that they had taken him away from them for good. However, every action they took against him only served God's greater plan. The same principle applies to your life. Those who plot against you, lying, setting traps, or plotting in secret, are digging pits they themselves will fall into. This is not about retaliation on your part. Genesis 50:20. Do you see how God can take even the darkest moments of your life and turn them into stepping stones for your purpose? The chosen actually don't have to do anything. Exodus 14:14. If you ever feel that your silence is misinterpreted as weakness, consider David's story with Saul. Your silence carries more power than any response. because it allows divine forces to work without interference. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Even though he was wronged and relentlessly pursued, David never retaliated, even when he had the chance, because he knew that God was entitled to vengeance. Romans 12:19 states, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. I will repay, says the Lord." Consider Haman in the book of Esther, who plotted to destroy Mordecai and the Jewish people. In his conceit, he built gallows confident in his plan. David's restraint was not weakness, but wisdom, based on the understanding that God's justice is far more effective than any human action. Have you ever thought that withholding retaliation could be an act of faith? Can you think of times in your own life when the harm meant for you seemed to backfire on the one who caused it? When the boomerang of their actions returns, it doesn't just bring back the harm they intended. In the end, however, it was Haman who hung on the very structure he had built. This isn't a coincidence. It's the exactness of divine justice. Their reputation, relationships, ambitions, or even their freedom are all at risk, and it magnifies it. Their confusion and desperation stem from a higher plan that they cannot understand. Doesn't it bring you peace to know that every plan against you is already under God's watchful eye, and that you, the chosen, continue to rise while their plans fall apart? Silence is often the most effective response. It's not passivity, but trust. Trust that the one who called you is also the one who protects you. What if your current struggles are just setting you up for the victory God has already ordained? Every attempt to harm you only serves to bring you closer to the purpose God has for your life. The harder they push, the faster they accelerate their own downfall. Therefore, stand firm. Let your peace remain unshaken, knowing that no weapon formed against you will prosper. You are chosen, and no plot against you can prevail under the hand of divine justice. Those who seek to destroy someone under divine protection are ultimately causing destruction for themselves. What they send out will always return amplified and unavoidable. 3. Ego is their downfall. Ego is a double-edged sword, powerful but ultimately destructive. And for those who rise against the chosen ones, it becomes their greatest weakness. They act under the delusion that their connections, power, or status make them untouchable. Have you noticed how often arrogance leads to someone's downfall? What makes them feel so invincible? Ego makes them blind to the bigger picture. It makes them believe they are in control, but they fail to see the invisible forces at work in the life of someone who is chosen. Your steps are not random. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. Proverbs 16:18. Do you recall the conceit of Pharaoh in the story of Moses? His ego made him think he could defy God. They are led by divine orchestration. Even when you are struggling or vulnerable, you are being set up for something bigger. However, the enemies don't see this. They mistake your struggles for signs of weakness, believing you are an easy target. This is the trap of ego. It makes people blind to reality and causes them to overreach. The Lord Almighty has a day in store for all the proud and lofty, for all that is exalted, and they will be humbled. Isaiah 2:12. Even as Egypt fell under plague after plague, his defiance only hastened his downfall. His power, which he believed to be unshakable, was taken away as God's hand moved. How many times have you witnessed someone's pride drive them to make choices from which they were unable to recover? The enemies of the chosen ones are constantly caught in this trap, their conceit driving them to attack viciously, manipulate, lie, and strike harder, mistaking your composure for defeat, not realizing that their ego is driving them to ruin. It makes them believe they have control over the results, but they are entering a battle they have already lost. It's interesting to note that you don't even need to answer. Your silence is wisdom rather than restraint. Proverbs 11:2 states that when pride arises, shame follows, but wisdom follows humility. Divine justice humbles rather than corrects. So what happens when the power they depended on vanishes? When the allies they trusted desert them? When their carefully constructed image starts to crumble under the weight of their own arrogance? The irony is evident. And when it moves, it destroys the enemy's entire foundation. The Lord raises up the humble. He casts the wicked to the ground. Psalm 147:6. Think of Goliath standing erect, taunting David with his overpowering height and strength. His pride rendered him ignorant to the fact that his defeat was already certain. Goliath didn't merely fall because of a stone. They thought their ego made them strong, yet it was the very thing that made them weak. According to James 4:6, God opposes the proud but favors the humble. He fell because his ego made him foolish enough to underestimate the power of God working through David. Ego did not make them invincible. In the end, the enemies are left broken with nothing but the realization that their perceived strength was the very cause of their collapse. Psalm 112:6. Doesn't it give you comfort to know that you don't have to fight back? That the very thing they rely on to harm you is the seed of their own downfall. In the meantime, you, the chosen one, stand firm, untouched, and rising above the ashes of their failed schemes. The righteous will never be shaken. They will be remembered forever. 4. God uses their jail sentence as a music stage. When the wicked find themselves behind bars, it's never just about the physical imprisonment. Have you ever wondered why their fall is so public, so undeniable? It's because that jail cell is more than a consequence. Ego is their downfall, and divine justice ensures that no amount of arrogance can ever overpower the calling and protection over your life. Because the Lord Almighty has a purpose, and who can stop him? His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back? Isaiah 14:27. For those who have lived their lives living off of deceit, manipulation, and oppression, incarceration becomes a mirror. It is a stage, a divine platform where God displays his unparalleled ability to humble the arrogant and hold them accountable. This isn't just a fall from grace. It's God's justice in action. The mighty seem to fall hardest. Have you noticed? They are stripped of their power and pretense, forced to face the truth they've been avoiding for so long, the harm they've caused, and the divine authority they dared to challenge. They are no longer the rulers of their empires, but people sitting face to face with the consequences of their decisions. Those who once walked with pride, showing off their wealth and power, are now reduced to mere mortals, and their titles, resources, and self-made thrones disappear. And here's the profound truth. God doesn't conceal this process. Their incarceration becomes a public lesson, a potent reminder of what happens when people disobey divine authority and turn against the chosen ones. The Lord alone will be exalted in that day. Isaiah 21:17. Man's arrogance will be brought low and human pride humbled. In the book of Daniel, King Nebuchadnezzar ruled with unparalleled arrogance, believing his kingdom was the product of his own might. It's as though God uses their downfall to send a message. No one is above his justice, and no amount of human power can stand against God, no matter how untouchable they seemed. The Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to whoever he wishes. Daniel 4:32. While the wicked are confined, their inner turmoil becomes their greatest punishment. Guilt, regret, and the weight of their actions consume them. But what happened? God humbled him, forcing him to live like a wild animal until he acknowledged God's sovereignty. Do you see how this reverberates in the lives of those who oppose you? Their downfall is not merely physical. It is spiritual, emotional, and intensely personal. In the meantime, the chosen ones, those they attempted to destroy, continue to rise, while they are no longer blinded by the illusion of control, but are instead faced with the reality of their choices. Even more remarkable is how their fall becomes a lesson for the world. Jail isn't just a cell, it's a stage where God makes a bold statement. You stay unharmed, protected by divine protection, demonstrating to everyone that God's justice is not only real, but inevitable. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him, and he helps me. Psalm 28:7. You continue to walk in purpose while they struggle with their failures and watch their empires fall apart. Their arrogance becomes the catalyst for their destruction, and their downfall serves as a warning to anyone who dares to challenge the chosen. Do not be fooled. God cannot be mocked. Galatians 6:7 states that a man reaps what he sows. 5. The failed assassination plan. When people set out to destroy a chosen one, they aim for complete devastation. Doesn't it bring peace to know that no amount of human power, no scheme, no act of oppression can stand against the justice of God? Jail is not just a punishment. It's a divine declaration that his justice reigns supreme. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. They want complete destruction, not just minor inconveniences and obstacles. They want to break your spirit, break your peace, and ruin your life. But this is what they don't understand. Why should I be afraid of whom? Psalm 27:1. Every scheme, every carefully laid trap, and every calculated attempt to take you down is doomed to fail before it even begins. This is because the chosen ones are protected by a divine shield, which isn't passive. Rather, it actively works against those who plot harm. Remember Daniel in the lion's den? His enemies planned to have him cast into a pit with hungry lions because they knew their plan would fail. Isaiah 54:17 states, "No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you." The beauty of this divine shield is how it transforms the enemy's plans into their own downfall. And yet, not a single lion touched him because God's protection was with him. The same trap that was intended for Daniel ended up being the undoing of those who plotted against him. It's not failure, it's divine intervention. The very weapons that were created against you end up being the means of their destruction. Have you ever noticed how easily God's protection works? Your enemies invest time, effort, and money into their schemes. Their lies fall apart, their alliances fall apart, and their strategies collapse under their own weight. There is no wisdom, no insight, and no plan that can succeed against the Lord. Proverbs 21:30. Consider the story of Haman in the book of Esther. Imagine their frustration as they realize their power, no matter how great it seemed, is useless against God's plan for your life. His plans didn't just fail, they backfired, and Haman himself was hanged on the very gallows he built. This is how divine justice operates. Despite everything, you, the chosen one, remain standing. He spent every waking moment planning to destroy Morai and the Jewish people, building gallows in anticipation of their downfall. They don't understand it. How could you possibly escape unscathed after everything they've done? The answer is straightforward. God's protection of the chosen is unwavering and absolute, and their failed assassination plan becomes more than just their defeat. Your spirit is unbroken, your peace is intact, and your life is still thriving. When they see that their efforts have only served to emphasize God's greatness, they are left to deal with the consequences of their actions. But the Lord is faithful, and He will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. It becomes your testimony, a tangible reminder of God's omnipotence and faithfulness. 2 Thessalonians 3:3. In the meantime, you keep going forward unfazed and unassailable. Their weapons and schemes failed, but their failure serves as a public declaration of God's sovereignty, reminding everyone that no human power can defeat God's plans. Doesn't it bring you peace to know that no matter how many plans are made against you, they will always fail? With God on your side, every attack becomes a chance to show off His glory and demonstrate that His plans for you are unstoppable. The sixth is the reversal of roles. Life has a way of turning things around, don't you think? But for the chosen, this isn't merely a coincidence. It's divine poetry. Those who once plotted against you, controlled your life, and pulled strings are now in an unthinkable position. They once thrived on control, making moves in secret and thinking they held all the cards. But now their persistent attempts to dictate your destiny have backfired, and now their own fate hangs in the balance. Helpless, the Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for a day of disaster. Proverbs 16:4. The plans of the Lord stand firm forever, the purposes of His heart through all generations. Psalm 33:11. Do you see how quickly the tables turn? 1 minute they are threatening you, planning your demise, and determining your future. However, their conceit prevented them from seeing that they were never really in control in the first place. Can you think of a time when someone undervalued God's protection over them and ended up facing the consequences of their own actions? The story of Haman in the book of Esther perfectly captures this reversal of roles. One moment, they are at the mercy of forces far greater than themselves. Their power, which they once wielded so arrogantly, has been stripped away, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. Haman constructed gallows for Mordecai, certain that he would destroy him. But by God's will, Mon was the one hanged on those very gallows. This was not justice. Rather, it was a manifestation of divine order, a reminder that no one can change the fate that God has already written. And it is more than just your enemies losing power. The Lord lowers the counsel of the nations to nothing, and those who once felt invincible are now left waiting, watching, and facing the very consequences they believed were reserved for others. It's a complete reversal of roles. Those who once thrived on controlling outcomes are now spectators in their own downfall. He thwarts the people's schemes. Psalm 33:10. For you, this reversal is about justice, not retaliation, and witnessing God's promises come to pass in a way that makes it clear that He is sovereign. Do you recall the story of Joseph? His brothers conspired to sell him into slavery, believing that he had been removed from their lives. Years later, however, Joseph was standing as a ruler in Egypt, the man who had control over their destiny. As your enemies struggled to make sense of their shattered plans and missing positions, you rise, and their efforts to deny you your purpose only serve to further your journey into the calling that God has for you. The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in Him. Though he may stumble, he will not fall because the Lord upholds him with His hand. Psalm 37:23-24. This is no coincidence. It is divine order. The roles have changed, and the message is unquestionable. How powerful is it to know that their actions couldn't stop what was destined for you? As they watch helplessly as their plans fall apart, remember that the chosen ones are never at the mercy of their enemies. Rather, their enemies serve as a lesson in the unstoppable power of God's justice. Their downfall is not about your strength, but rather about God's sovereignty, and the reversal of roles is evidence of His faithfulness. Number 7. When God is silent, it's strategy. Have you ever prayed fervently and cried out for intervention only to be met with silence? It's unnerving, isn't it? When your enemies are loud and unrelenting and heaven seems quiet, it's a reminder that no one can undo what God has planned for you. It's natural to question whether God is hearing your prayers, but the truth is that God's silence is never an indication of inaction. Rather, it's a strategy. Psalm 37. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. His silence is not carelessness, but preparation. He is laying the groundwork for something much bigger than a quick reaction, a flawless, indisputable act of justice. Do you recall the story of Jesus before His crucifixion? He stood trial, falsely accused and ridiculed, but He did not defend Himself. Every plot, every lie, and every attack is being recorded with divine precision. As Isaiah 53:7 states, He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so He did not open His mouth. His silence set the stage for the ultimate victory through the resurrection by exposing the full extent of His enemy's wickedness. His silence was not weakness, but strategy. In the same way, God's silence in your life is a divine setup, a strategic chess move that gives your enemies the impression that they have won, making them bolder in their actions and unwittingly causing their own demise. This isn't punishment for you, it's exposure for them, because nothing is hidden that won't be revealed, or hidden that won't be revealed. Luke 12:2. Have you ever noticed how time exposes people's true natures? If God took action right away, the extent of their wickedness might never be revealed. But by waiting, He gives the world a front row seat to their downfall by allowing their intentions to be fully revealed. Consider Pharaoh in Exodus, who repeatedly hardened his heart by refusing to let the Israelites leave. It's not just about punishing your enemies. God's timing wasn't delayed. It was intentional. But for this purpose, I have raised you up to show you my power, so that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth. Exodus 9:16. His arrogance increased with each refusal, but so did the size of his final defeat. It's about making it clear that they brought it on themselves. When God acts, there is no room for doubt or uncertainty. His silence becomes the loudest response, a statement of His unparalleled wisdom and timing. Can you see now how His silence is never an indication of desertion, but rather a tactic for your eventual triumph? Consider the story of Job. It appeared that God was silent during all of Job's suffering, allowing the enemy to attack without restraint. But God ultimately restored Job's fortunes, demonstrating His justice and faithfulness. Job 42:12. The Lord blessed the latter portion of Job's life more than the former. The Lord is not slow in keeping His promise, as some people understand slowness. Rather, He is patient with you, wanting everyone to repent rather than perish. 2 Peter 3:9 states that every delay is intentional. Every silence is a part of His plan to align everything perfectly for your triumph. And when He finally moves, it is swift, precise, and undeniable. Great. Life versus legacy. Your enemies believed that destroying you would be their ultimate victory. Therefore, when God appears to be silent, know that He is watching, waiting, and laying the groundwork for a victory that is far greater than you could have ever dreamed. His silence is not the absence of His hand, but rather the genius of His strategy. But here's the irony. In their obsession with killing you, they destroyed something much bigger, their own legacy. As the saying goes, whoever digs a pit will fall into it. If someone rolls a stone, it will roll back on them. Proverbs 26:27 states that every act of malice, every scheme, and every word of slander they unleashed against you became the seeds of their own downfall. You not only survived their attacks, but you flourished in spite of them. Doesn't it say volumes about the strength of God's protection when the very weapons that were formed against you end up being the tools of your testimony? The story of Joseph in Genesis serves as a reminder of this fact. While they worked tirelessly to bring you down, they unwittingly created a reputation for themselves, a reputation of shame and disgrace. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. His brothers, consumed by jealousy, sold him into slavery, thinking they had destroyed his future and ended his dreams. However, God had other plans, and Joseph's life became a legacy of triumph, while his brothers were left to deal with the shame of their actions. Your adversaries are no different, according to Genesis 50:20. Their efforts to destroy you only serve to strengthen your testimony, and while they vanish into obscurity, remembered only for their transgressions, your life becomes a ray of hope and triumph. It is a testament to God's strength and faithfulness. As you rise, they fall. It's not a coincidence. It's divine justice. God made sure that their plans to destroy you would have the opposite effect. While they were preoccupied with ending your story, they unintentionally ended theirs. The memory of the righteous is a blessing, but the name of the wicked will rot. Proverbs 10:7. Do you see how God's hand has worked in your life, transforming every attack into a stepping stone for something greater? Take the story of Saul of Tarsus before he became Paul, a persecutor of Christians who sought to destroy lives and silence voices. Their legacy is now one of pride, malice, and failure, while yours shines as a testimony of endurance and faith. However, his destructive legacy came to an end when he met Jesus on the road to Damascus. His life was changed, and his new purpose eclipsed the shame of his past. Jeremiah 29:11 states, I know the plans I have for you. These plans are to give you hope and a future, to prosper you rather than harm you. Their schemes were never strong enough to erase you, because God's hand was always on you. While they plotted in pride, God prepared your victory. Their downfall is not simply a punishment. God's work in your life is no less profound. The very harm intended to silence you becomes the basis of your testimony. In the meantime, your legacy becomes evidence that God can transform anything intended for harm into something extraordinary. And we know that in everything, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. It's a lesson, a cautionary tale of what happens when pride and malice go unchecked. Romans 8:28. So, while your enemies are remembered for their failures, your story continues to inspire. Your life stands as undeniable proof that with God in control, life always wins over legacy. You are living proof that no plan of destruction can succeed against what God has destined to thrive. 9. The instant shift. When God moves, it's not slow or subtle. It's quick, absolute, and beyond human understanding. He doesn't need days, weeks, or even hours. He can destroy what took years to build in a single moment. Have you ever seen a moment so abrupt and profound that it left no doubt that it was orchestrated by divine power? His authority is unrivaled, and His timing is always perfect. Do you know anyone who has become so accustomed to their position of power that they feel they are untouchable? Those who once stood tall, boasting of their power and influence, can find themselves brought down in the blink of an eye. Scripture reminds us that He brings princes to naught and reduces the rulers of this world to nothing. Isaiah 40:23. This sudden change demonstrates the unpredictable nature of God's justice. The adversaries of the chosen frequently become complacent in their roles, assuming that their fleeting success will last forever, believing that their deceptions, schemes, and haughtiness will protect them from repercussions. However, they are unaware that God's silence is not a sign of weakness, but rather of strategy. The story of King Belshazzar in Daniel 5 is a prime example of how quickly God's justice acts when His time comes. At the height of his conceit, he disobeyed God by using sacred temple vessels during a sumptuous feast. But God delivered judgment at the same moment. The mysterious writing on the wall announced his fate, and his kingdom was taken from him that very night. Daniel 5:25-28. A warning that no human pride can stand before divine authority. Have you ever had a time where someone's arrogance brought them down in an instant? That's how God works. When He moves, the collapse is abrupt and irrevocable. The Bible confirms this reality, stating, "For the Lord Almighty has purposed, and who can thwart Him?" Once at the top, controlling others, manipulating situations, and reeing in their schemes, an individual is stripped of everything: power, status, and even the respect of those they once ruled. Who is able to retract his outstretched hand? Isaiah 14:27. Pharaoh's resistance to God's command to free the Israelites led to one of the most dramatic reversals in history. His power seemed absolute, but when God acted, it vanished in an instant. This serves as a sobering reminder that God's plans are unstoppable. Have you ever wondered why God sometimes seems to wait before acting? Even when everything seems quiet for the enemies of the chosen, this sudden change is a sobering reminder that God's power and timing are unparalleled. The Red Sea swallowed His army, wiping out the might He once possessed. What would it look like in your life to trust God's timing? Hebrews 12:26 states, "And while they face the collapse of everything they once relied on, the chosen ones stand firm, shielded by divine protection." When God makes a decision, His actions have a profound impact on both the physical and spiritual worlds, making it clear that He has the authority to act. As your enemies fall, their downfall becomes a public reminder of God's sovereignty, a declaration that no human plan can alter His divine will. And as Paul reminds us in Romans, if God is for us, who can be against us? Romans 8:31. For the chosen, this instant shift is not just a victory, but a testimony, proof that God's justice is real and unstoppable. Do you see how God's hand works, turning the tide in your favor in ways no one could predict? When the shift occurs, it's undeniable, leaving the world in awe of His power, and you as a living testimony of His faithfulness. This rhetorical question serves as a powerful reminder that no force can stand in the way of God's plans for your life. 10. The existence of spiritual immunity. So, don't worry. The same God who brings swift justice to your enemies is also the one who guarantees your victory. Have you ever wondered how the chosen ones survive trials that would break others? Their enemies plan and scheme, confident in their schemes, but the chosen stand firm, unflinching in their purpose and strength. But the Lord is faithful, and He will strengthen you and protect you from the evil one. 2 Thessalonians 3:3. The perseverance of the chosen is not about their own strength, but about the power operating within them. While others crumble under the weight of adversity, the chosen ones are sustained by a source far greater than themselves. This resilience is not luck or sheer determination, but rather the anointing of God. Do you recall David's words in the Psalms? "The Lord is my strength and my shield." Time and again, plans fail, traps backfire, and attempts to destroy them fail, leaving their enemies frustrated and helpless, unable to understand why their efforts are in vain. It's this spiritual immunity, this divine covering that bewilders their enemies. Psalm 28:7. This is the secret of the chosen ones. Their strength is not their own, but comes directly from God. This immunity does not mean that the chosen are exempt from pain or struggle. They experience hardships, setbacks, and difficult moments, just like everyone else. My heart trusts in him, and he helps me. My heart leaps for joy, and I praise him with my song. Isaiah 54:17. Consider Joseph, who was sold into slavery by his brothers and later falsely accused and imprisoned. They are never defeated, though, and their spirit is unaffected because God's protection guarantees their ultimate victory. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. Joseph's story serves as a reminder that the chosen are not only protected, but also positioned for greatness through their trials. To others, his circumstances might have seemed hopeless, but he carried a divine immunity, and every setback only served to bring him closer to his purpose, and every attempt to harm him ultimately failed. The enemies of the chosen always fail. Their plans fail, their alliances fall apart, and their lies unravel under the weight of divine protection, and they realize that no force on earth can override God's will. Have you experienced this in your own life? Attacks that came your way, but instead of shattering you, showed you the depth of God's strength within you. The Lord makes firm the steps of the one who delights in him, the Bible says. The selected are live evidence that God's plan cannot be stopped, and this spiritual immunity is a testimonial to the strength of God's anointing. Even though he may stumble, he will not fall, for the Lord upholds him with his hand, says Psalm 37:23-24. Your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. Deuteronomy 24. When enemies see the chosen standing firm, it serves as a humbling reminder of God's authority. Their survival is not just a victory. It is a declaration of God's unparalleled sovereignty for the Lord. The chosen spirit is untouchable because it is sustained by the Creator himself. Doesn't it comfort you to know that your strength comes from the one who holds the entire universe in his hands, not from what you can do? Others falter under pressure, but you remain. They can plot, attack, and attempt to destroy, but their efforts will always fail. 11. The duality of jail, physical and spiritual. Jail is often perceived as a place where freedom is taken away and people are imprisoned behind bars of steel and stone. This isn't just survival, it's spiritual immunity. And it's evidence that the chosen are never really at the mercy of their enemies. Their strength is God's strength, and no force can stand against it. However, imprisonment takes on a much deeper dimension for those who rebel against the chosen ones. Their spirits are confined in addition to their bodies. The Lord declares, "There is no peace for the wicked." Isaiah 48:22. Although your enemies may receive physical jail sentences, the true punishment is much more severe. Imagine being imprisoned in a place where the walls aren't just made of physical material. They are made of regret, guilt, and the crushing realization that they have challenged something that is protected by God. In the silence of their imprisonment, they are confronted with the reality they have been fighting so hard to hide. Every act of malice, selfish choice, and pride-driven scheme now backfires, and the spiritual weight becomes intolerable. No amount of money, power, or influence can free someone from the torment of their own conscience. They may attempt to hide it by keeping their heads up and acting as though nothing is wrong, but on the inside, they are prisoners. Have you ever thought about how the weight of guilt can imprison someone more thoroughly than any cell could ever do? In the meantime, the chosen ones, those they sought to destroy, prosper, their lives unaffected by the attacks intended to harm them, their spirits free and unburdened. Their minds repeatedly replay their transgressions, entangling them in a cycle of shame and regret. Wickedness punishes the wicked, and they are caught in the cords of their sin. Proverbs 5:22. Consider Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. Even after carrying out his betrayal, his guilt consumed him, and no amount of silver could ease the weight of his regret. When Judas, who had betrayed Jesus, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse. This stark contrast between the freedom of the chosen and the spiritual imprisonment of the wicked is the ultimate justice. Matthew 27:3. Do you see how divine justice operates? It doesn't just stop at external consequences. It reaches the deepest parts of the soul, exposing the truth and enforcing accountability. Judas's spiritual torment ultimately led to his downfall, a striking example of how inner imprisonment can outweigh any external punishment. Because we know him who said, "It is mine to avenge," those who oppose the chosen ones bear the unwavering burden of knowing that they failed not only in their plots, but also in challenging God himself. The physical chains may be removed, but the spiritual anguish endures. I will pay back. Hebrews 10:30 states that the Lord will judge his people once more. This punishment's starkness lies in its permanence. Although physical confinement may end, spiritual imprisonment endures. It's not just about being imprisoned. It's about being stuck in a never-ending cycle of self-loathing. Can you imagine going about your daily life knowing that you lost to something much bigger than yourself, a divine justice from which you are powerless? Their attempts to destroy you only serve to emphasize the strength of God's protection over your life. The physical and spiritual duality of jail is the ultimate reminder of God's sovereignty. While your enemies struggle with regret and guilt, you rise. While they are caught in cycles of spiritual torment, you walk freely in the purpose God has set for you. The inner anguish of knowing that they lost to divine justice is far worse than the physical bars. Their punishment is not temporary, but permanent, serving as a continual reminder that while God is in charge, no one can escape the consequences of their deeds. 12. God's wrath is surgical. When the wicked believe they have escaped judgment, they fail to see one crucial fact. God does not deal in chaos or randomness. His wrath is precise, calculated, and intentional, and his actions are always targeted precisely where they matter most. Have you ever noticed how God's justice is never chaotic or random? Isaiah 30:18 states, "Because the Lord is a God of justice, blessed are all who wait for him." God's wrath is intentional and never about pointless punishment. Rather, it is about restoration, accountability, and justice, rather than just focusing on the outward effects of sin. Think of Pharaoh in the book of Exodus. Have you ever wondered why some people's downfall seems to hit them where it hurts the most? Could it be that God is addressing something deeper than just their actions? His actions strike at the heart of those who plot against the chosen ones, exposing the illusions of control and power they once held so dearly. When God finally intervened at the Red Sea, his entire army was destroyed, along with the appearance of Pharaoh's invincibility. His conceit led him to think that he could disobey God's order to free the Israelites. But God's plagues were not random acts of destruction. Rather, they were targeted lessons that destroyed each of the false gods of Egypt and a particular pillar of Pharaoh's power. The wicked are frequently unaware of the link between their demise and the seeds they have sown. They may lose their wealth, prestige, or reputation, but these are only symptoms. Doesn't it comfort you to know that God's justice is always precise, addressing not just the surface, but the root cause? This is the surgical precision of his wrath. As stated in Proverbs 16:18, pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. God does not merely take away tangible possessions. He destroys the fundamental foundation of their pride and security. The real punishment is the annihilation of their sense of self and their conviction in their invincibility. In the book of Daniel, for example, King Nebuchadnezzar's pride caused him to claim that the great kingdom of Babylon had been established solely by his might. However, God humbled him, making him live like a savage until he accepted God's sovereignty. Nebuchadnezzar's wealth and kingdom remained intact, but his pride was crushed. Those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. Daniel 4:37. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's arrogance brought about their complete humbling? What does that reveal about God's treatment of pride? What makes God's justice even more profound is that it teaches lessons to everyone who witnesses it, not just those who are punished. When God acts, he leaves no room for misunderstanding. His wrath is not about destroying for the sake of destruction, but rather about restoring balance, teaching humility, and reminding everyone of his unrivaled authority. His actions serve as a public declaration that no one can evade divine justice. They remind the world that God's timing is perfect, his actions are deliberate, and his purpose is unshakable. The lessons are clear. No one can disobey divine authority and avoid the consequences. Human vengeance blinds itself with rage, but God's wrath is guided by wisdom, ensuring that justice is served and restoration is possible. For the chosen, this precision serves as a reminder of the extent of God's protection for their enemies. Do you see how his justice is intended not only to punish, but also to teach and correct? Do not be fooled. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Galatians 6-7. God's wrath is always appropriate, always timely, and always just. It strikes at the core of the issue, leaving no doubt that his authority is absolute. It is an unmistakable declaration that no plan or power can stand against the will of God. The chosen ones rise, their testimony magnified by God's justice, while the wicked are humbled and their pride demolished. In the great tapestry of life, every thread is meticulously woven with purpose, and every action, good or evil, carries the weight of its consequences. Despite storms, hardships, and betrayals, the chosen ones remain steadfast. For those who plot against you, the chosen, no amount of strategy, influence, or deceit can stand against the unwavering precision of divine justice. God's silence is not his absence. Rather, it is his strategy. Their strength comes not from their own might, but from the divine protection of a power far greater than any earthly force. The enemies of the chosen may walk with confidence for a while, but their reckoning is inevitable. Whether in this life or the next, their attempts to destroy the chosen only serve to hasten their own downfall. His wrath, surgical and purposeful, dismantles the pride and arrogance of the wicked, guaranteeing that justice is served at the deepest level. The chosen rise, stronger, unbroken, and more radiant than ever before. While their legacy crumbles, their power wanes, and their schemes are revealed for everyone to see. The chosen are not just survivors. They are the invincible force of divine protection and justice, which ultimately triumphs over the enemy's power. To all of you reading this, know that you are chosen, protected, and incredibly loved, and that no plan, no attack, and no force can defeat the purpose God has placed on your life. They are living examples of God's faithfulness, and their lives serve as evidence that no weapon created against them will succeed. Thank you for reading this reflection. May you walk with confidence knowing that the same God who fights for you will also bring His justice to pass. May His blessings overflow in your life, filling you with peace, purpose, and unwavering faith. Trust in His timing, lean on His strength, and know that His justice is always perfect and always on time. If this message struck a chord with you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this post to show your support. Share it with someone who needs encouragement. And let's work together to spread the truth of God's unwavering justice. Your participation keeps the conversation going and inspires others. Stay strong and remember that the final victory is always God's, and that it is also yours with Him. Let's work together to remind everyone that God's chosen are unstoppable,